with 1.1 being the prayer and the pledge. I would like to ask Dr. Rice if he would pray for us. Please come to the podium.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the day and for all blessings. We pray that what this commission does this evening will be in the best interest of the city. Guide them as they make decisions. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 2 is approval of the agenda, and I have 3 items to be considered to add to the agenda. 8.4, Cox Pike Concept Plan, Mr. Smythe. 8.5, Library Addition, Review of 800 Square Foot Addition, William Corlew, Architect. 8.6, Tree Bank Amendment to 2-103.4.
Motion for approval.
Second.
I have a first and a second for approval. Any discussion? All in favor?
No, wait 1 second. What was 8.6? We had the library addition.
Tree Bank Amendment to 2-103.4.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so 8.4, 5, and 6 are added to the agenda. So do we need a motion to approve the agenda as well?
You need a motion to approve the agenda with the.
With the amendments. Okay, so we need a motion to approve the agenda with the amendments,
Move to approve
or the additions.
Second.
the additions.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the agenda is approved with the additions to it. Number 3, citizens' comments. Limit to the first 5 citizens that signed in 3 minutes each, please. First person to speak will be Scott Tucker. Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
My name is Scott Tucker. I live at 7510.
If you'll pull the mic up to your, thank you.
Scott Tucker at 7510 Nathaniel Woods Boulevard. I thank you for having me this evening. I have some pictures there. One of them shows, I left up there, one of them shows a house. And the other one shows a box, and I'll get to those. I got that picture a week after I bought the house and moved in. I had been assured through the paperwork in purchasing the house that had never been flooded. I don't know if you consider that flooding or not, but it's real close. Not only am I concerned about it, my wife's concerned, and some of my neighbors, because of the drainage in the place, and also because of groundwater saturation. It presents health problems. And the pictures, you'll see a picture also of a drain box. That drain box was put in, and probably the only thing that saved my house from being flooded in the last couple of years. It is illegal. It has to be pulled out. I was told this by codes, and this apparently, that's the only thing that's really preventing my house from flooding. I've been assured by codes that the situation will be resolved, and not to worry about it, that the developer, though, has still not submitted plans to fix it, but the problem will be rectified. It's been a couple of months since I first brought this up. What bothers me is the problem did not have to exist to begin with. If the developer had properly graded the project and the builder had raised the house approximately 15 inches, not only my house but other houses there that were built by the same builder, it wouldn't have been this problem would not have happened. There's a lot of good things about the house, but this is one thing that's of huge concern. And one of the problems too is I'm not sure the developer and the builder have to worry about this kind of stuff if it gets into building more here, because a codes department can be overwhelmed by the number of houses and the amount of construction and that goes on. And it's hard, I know from being in other cities where they have fast growth, it's hard for the inspectors to keep up. It's hard for you to go over all the plans. I don't know if the plans were submitted for, or have to be submitted here for the, to have the grade and elevations on a development when they first start out. But I think if they don't, it'd be a good idea to have them do that and to look over those to see what the problems could be. Because I don't think we want to have the ground saturation, because it creates so many problems, black mold, flooding, health issues that follow, that I think it'd be advisable not to have them. And I know from being with people in this community and come up here quite a bit that people are trying to get things done well here, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the city and how hard it works to get things done. I appreciate the codes department. But I think this is something that may need to be taken up by the Planning Commission to look at these type of codes to see if something can be done to where this doesn't happen. And I'm not here to try to put a lot of codes in, make it hard for people to develop or build houses, because I don't think you should. But I think there's certain things that need to be done to be able to have situations like this not happen. So that's what I wanted to say this evening.
And what's the name of the subdivision again?
It's Western Hills.
That's what I thought. I was just checking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Number 2, Emily Wade, please come to the podium, state your name and your address.
He's going to pass out some pictures. Thank you to the board for letting me speak for a minute. I'm Emily Wade. I live at 7307 Hudgens Court in Fairview in the Polston Place subdivision. I have lived in Fairview for 9 years, and I had the house built by a local contractor here in Fairview. I realize that Fairview is on the verge of tremendous residential growth, and as a citizen of the community, I have a concern I'd like to bring before the Planning Commission. If I may, the first picture shows that I've dealt with water issues since I moved into the home. That was the summer after I moved in. Showing my house was built near a culvert, and therefore, when it rains, the water just flows freely. Every time it rains, it gets into my crawl space. It's flooded, and there's really nowhere for the water to go. It's caused mold and possibly radon, which causes lung diseases, health issues. I have a daughter that has asthma that's dealt with some issues. And I've put in several French drains to divert the water, but I still can't get any sort of relief. The second picture shows where the water saturated the foundation of my home, where it was unsealed, looking at the bricks going straight to the foundation, and that is directly under my master bedroom. And the third picture shows how the water's flowing freely from the lack of the sealing as well. And also on the other side of my home, I have the same issue, so I'm kind of being bombarded. My home sits in a lower graded area. I don't know anything about building, nothing about structure. I just know it's pretty, and I moved in it, and, you know, I trusted my builder. I just think that as the excavation is done out here, and during construction, just look at where this groundwater is coming from, and, you know, there is probably springs around everywhere. Excavate the ground a little bit better. I want I'd like for the contractors and developers to be more cautious when they're grading and preparing lots for building, for the water problems, to prepare for the better drainage. You know, we never know when another national flood's going to come along and wipe any of us out, right? But thank you again to the board for letting me speak.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Number 3, Alan Basell. Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Alan Basell, and I live at 7126 Grammar Drive in the city. I'm speaking to you today both as a citizen and as your duly elected city commissioner. At the request of Commissioner Johnson, you have been asked to review and consider proposed changes to the Design Review Manual, specifically the section that describes the calculation for tree removal when replacement is not an option. I endorse Commissioner Johnson's request. While I support tree conservation, I have a concern that the manual section as written provides an unfair playing field for our individuals competing in the commercial real estate market. I was the PC chairman when Mr. Lavorne presented the design manual for approval almost 10 years ago. At that time, we did not envision the number of inquiries we are receiving today about large developments. Fairview has changed greatly since then, and as growth continues, the underlying focus of our tree protection rules should be to prevent what happened in front of City Hall from happening again, not create a revenue stream with the potential result being to deter someone from investing in our city. At our current charge level, I am concerned that it is exactly what we are doing. If I was a property owner trying to market my property for commercial endeavors, I would have to consider removing trees before I sold the property to avoid that significant fee. I don't think that's what we're seeking to happen. Thank you for your consideration in advance and for allowing me to address you on this issue.
Thank you. Number 4, Stuart Johnson. Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Stuart Johnson, 2326 Fairview Boulevard. Commissioner Basell really stated all that needed to be said, but the level playing field is what I want y'all to think about. From a residential standpoint, you can cut your trees down at no penalty. But if you want to use your property for commercial or sell to a developer, you're going to have to pay the city money if you can't put the trees back. We don't feel that that is where we need to be going right now. We've had multiple calls from developers from different areas around town, one especially across from Camp Marymount, and they cannot afford to buy the property because they've been told it'll be almost an $800,000 payment they will have to pay the city, which means they will not be able to do the development. If we change it to what is presented in front of you this evening, this will make it a level playing field for everyone, and we can move forward, and everyone will be welcome here in our city. And I think that's what everyone is after. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Number 5, John Cherry. Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
I'm John Cherry, 2060 Fairview Boulevard. I just want to take this opportunity to welcome everybody out to the Business Expo this Saturday. from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It'll be at the Fairview Recreation Center in the gymnasium. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Number 4, approval of the minutes, 4.1, March 10th, 2015, regular minutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Number 5, recommendations. There are none. Number 6, bonds. 6.1, Scarborough Village subdivision, letter of credit to cover the roads, sidewalks, and storm drainage, $52,000. Planning Commission set the bond on February 12, 2008. The bond expires May 19, 2015. Mr. Humber?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I have a letter from Pinnacle Bank that replaces that, the existing letter of credit that is due to expire, and they have renewed it for another year, so we have it in place. It's not
Okay.
necessary to take any action on it at this point.
Thank you. Number 7, old business, there is none. Number 8, new business. Eight point one, discuss and/or take action on final master plan development plan for Fernvale Apartments, map 42, parcel 65, owner Timothy R. Mangrum.
I'd like to recuse myself from voting on this, but make myself available for any questions or comments.
Make a motion for approval.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Mr. Beata, would you like to read the engineer's comments?
Engineers' comments for item 8.1. Number 1, the site plan should reference the most current FEMA flood map. Number 2, please submit a copy of the previous drainage calcs for the existing detention pond in the Fernvale Springs subdivision, along with a cover letter recertifying that the existing pond was designed and constructed in a manner that compensated for the post-developed stormwater runoff from this site. Cover letter should be stamped and signed by a registered engineer. Number 3, all storm pipe located under paved areas should be RCP. Please note that current city regulations require the following. Number 4, perimeter of parking areas to have concrete curbing. Number 5, a drive aisle width of 26 feet. Number 6, all parking areas to be landscape screened from adjacent properties. Number 7, fire protection flows of 2,500 gallons per minute with a residual pressure of 20 psi. If buildings are to be sprinkled, the flow requirement can be cut in half. Number 8, a 6-foot fence around the boundary of the property, fencing detail to be shown on site plan. Alternatively, the PC may allow for landscaping screening in lieu of fencing if they so desire. Number 9, proposed playground equipment located in the play area is to be specified on the site plan. Number 10, a minimum 2,000 square foot clubhouse facility. And number 11, street and area lights lighting the entire development.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Tim, could you give a little history on this project?
This was approved as it's presented, final approval in '08. And of course, that was early recession period, so it got put on hold, and I considered doing other things with this property and ultimately decided to move forward with apartments. I think Fairview's got a need for some more apartments, but, and it wasn't real clear. I talked with Frank, may have even talked with Wayne, I don't remember if I did, but, because this was approved, final approved, and I just thought it'd be a good idea to bring it back, because it's been so long, so nobody would say, well, he pulled a quick one. I just wanted it to be open and just ask for reapproval.
Do you have any problems meeting these recommendations put forth by the engineer?
The engineer's comments.
Yeah.
A couple of them, because if you look at the eastern property line, those trees we did plant way back in anticipation for this, so they are there. So we wasn't planning on a privacy fence, which would be a lot of maintenance. If not maintained well, it'll look rough in just a few years. And those trees on the, like I said, on the eastern property line, those trees have been planted since '08. So they're big, mature, white pines now. We didn't have any, with a project of this size, we didn't see the need for a 2,000 square foot clubhouse, nor for the playground. So like I said, this was approved in '06 as it's drawn here. The street lights, I don't have a problem with those. We was actually gonna probably put some post lights behind the sidewalk, 2 in front of each building to help light it. But we don't have a problem with that. And I will say, there's one other thing that's not on Will's comments, that's not in his scope. The Water Authority has given me their feedback, and they've asked for one thing to be changed. Because the sewer line coming out of the existing pump station goes under what would be the parking lot, and it's PVC, so they either want it moved outside of the parking area or running ductile iron. So we're probably just gonna move it outside the parking lot, so where if it ever does break or rupture, they don't have to dig the parking lot back up.
Do we need to vote on a variance since this is coming back? Since the new subdivision regulations require the playground and clubhouse, do we need to vote on a variance to that?
The attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've got a few options. You can approve without any changes, and basically you'd be reapproving what was previously approved in 2008. You can deliberate on these 8 items that have been addressed that are currently found in your requirements, and pick and choose which ones you do want to require or which ones you think are applicable.
Okay, I see 11.
The first 3 in my opinion, should be required no matter what.
Okay, so what you're saying is the first 3 should be required no matter what. We're actually looking at the last 8 as.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think.
Numbers 4 through 11.
Okay,
Or it can be deliberated, yeah.
I think that, in my opinion, the motion needs to, once we decide what we're going to do, the motion needs to include that.
Yeah. And then, as has been your historical practice, any approval that you give tonight would inherently include a variance based on whatever your approval wound up being. So if you, for instance, if you said we want to require, and I'm not even looking at what they are, but numbers 5, 7, and 8, and the rest are okay, or the rest we're not requiring, then that motion for approval would be inherently include a variance for the remainder of those that you would not be requiring. And again, that items 4 through 11 aren't necessarily my recommendation. I was just told to review based on what's currently required. So that's why those items are there.
One thing about number 9, it says proposed playground equipment located in the play area is to be specified on the site plan. Is there a play area that?
Well, that's more or less green space. But
so what are you asking about number 9 then, not to provide the play equipment, right?
We're asking to be reapproved as presented.
Okay.
We
But it's
understand
just
one
so,
thing-
it's basically considered a play area, but it's open, just open grass space. Okay.
Of the ones that Will mentioned, the one that comes to mind that I see time and again that I catch is just the curbing. I just gives a more finished look and then gives you something to landscape to back grade to. The rest of them, I think because this was approved in 2008, I'm fine with, moving forward with it as drawn, but just requiring the curbing is my personal opinion.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of with you. I marked off 8, 9, 10. I don't know if there was another one I missed. But you're pretty much saying the three things, those are the three things that you were not planning on doing.
8, 9, and 10,
Yes.
and wasn't planning on 5, but 5's not a huge deal. And of course, the fire protection, number 7, we understand that, we gotta meet those requirements, and I've had a couple conversations with the fire chief, and he's supposed to be checking in to see if those buildings have to be sprinkled by fire marshal codes anyway. And I haven't heard back regarding that one, but we'll meet one of those two requirements on 7, either 2,500 PSI or sprinkle the buildings if our fire marshal requires it.
I agree with you about the 6-foot fence surrounding the boundary of the property. I think that's something we need to take a look at as a planning commission, because in properties that I've seen that have gone up lately that has been put in, you're right. It tends to, shortly after it's put in, not look very good. So I think that's something we need to look at in the future to see if there's a better plan.
And let's see, what was, without having it for, what was the difference in the, from the 26 versus what was approved back
What's on the plan currently is 24 feet wide.
24? Okay.
And I would give my professional opinion that that's a very suitable width and a very common width that you'll find in a number of jurisdictions for a drive aisle.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments on whether from 24 to 26, if that's, Well, let me ask, I appreciate actually you coming and doing this because technically we really already approved it. There's no reason.
We have had some come before us, though, that were approved, that we required them to do things. So I think, we need to look over this and discuss and,
No, I mean.
you know what I mean?
The approval had expired, though. so
It
you have
expired.
to-
That's what I'm saying. If it expires, then we have to go through the new regulations and just make sure, and a variance on what we don't, what we are saying
I agree.
we don't require.
You can approve it as it was presented. The only thing you'll do is ipso facto granting a variance on everything that was not on the original. Unless you specify different.
So basically, let me just recap. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 11. Is that right, Tim?
And 7.
Well, 7, didn't you bring that up as?
7, you'll have to do.
7
one
might
of
be
them.
Is you've got to, you've got
Yeah, I
to.
don't have an
I'm
option,
just, you know what I'm saying. 7's a have to, so like 1, 2, and 3. So would someone like to amend the motion to,
Move to approve the motion, amend the motion, the original motion, to enforce engineering comments, striking items 5, 8, 9, and 10. You want me to read those items for clarification?
if you'd like, that's fine.
5 would be the driveway aisle width of 26 foot. 8 is a 6-foot fence around the boundary of the property. 9 is the proposed playground equipment in the play area, and 10 would be the 2,000 square foot clubhouse facility.
A second?
I have a first and a second. Do we have any more discussion on this?
Yeah, I guess I'm fine with it. If we're having to do it anyway, then I don't know why we wouldn't go ahead and require the 26, if that's the purpose. If we're making other people, do it, then we might as well stick with the 26. I'm really okay with the others. But I still kind of. And is that for any apartment, condo, it would be the same with?
It would be for any multifamily development and any commercial and industrial development. So basically, any public, public's not the correct word. Any commercial, industrial, or multifamily development that has parking stalls that a drive aisle accesses, those parking stalls would be required to have a 26-foot wide aisle, based on what's in your current zoning ordinance.
What you stated earlier is, as typical, you've seen 24 as sufficient.
You see anything ranging from 20 to 26 is on the high end that I've seen in the jurisdictions that I'm familiar with. That could be
And I
something.
just wanted you to explain that
Sure.
because I know that ours says 26, and if we deem it to be necessary to be 24, we can change that, but it is what it is right now.
Right.
So. Okay, so how are we going to make the motion? Because we need to decide on this 24, 26.
If you want to leave it 26, since the motion's on the floor.
Right.
To strike item 5, then you would have to have an amended motion to leave item 5 in there, and then vote on that motion, then go back and vote on your original motion.
Well, the motion has, he said 5, didn't you say 5,
He
9,
said-
and 10?
5,
It
8,
said
9,
strike
10.
number 5, and if you're going to leave it at 26, and then the board needs to have an amended motion, if
Oh,
that's what
gotcha.
you want,
Yeah.
to strike number 5 from the eliminated and leave it in there, then go back and vote on your original motion with number 5 included.
Okay, so the amended motion is to strike number 5.
Now, the original motion is to strike number 5. If you're amending the motion, you'd be amending it to strike the strike, which would include number 5. I wouldn't make it that way, though. If I had an amended motion, I would just say, you'd amend the motion to include number 5 in the requirements. And then you vote on that, and
Well, what we have on the floor is to strike number 5, 9, and 10.
that's correct. But if you want
Yes.
to leave number 5 in there, you're going to have to amend it or withdraw your
Well,
original
but
motion.
Ms. Carroll's the one who said that, made the comment that,
Yeah, I'm not trying to get you
Okay.
to have an amended motion. I'm just telling you how you would do it.
Exactly.
If you want to follow up on
so
that.
that's what I'm saying. The motion that sits right now is to strike 5, 9, and 10.
And if everybody else is okay with it, I just want to question, and if from 20 to 26, I guess 24, if that's what averages. But if it's not necessary, or if ours is high, then maybe we need to reconsider.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
we need to reconsider it.
but I don't know. I don't know the thought process behind the 26. because, you know, as far as I know, I wasn't, well, who knows, I may have been there, I don't remember it.
Will the site conditions allow a 26-foot to add the 2 feet?
The only spot it would be tight was on the the eastern side. There's one section of parking that gets a little tight, but I think looks like there's enough room to add 2 more feet there without getting to the property line.
Yeah.
I can't do it, so y'all
Okay.
have at it.
Okay, so, but the way, okay. To amend the motion to do a variance of 24, or how do I need to do it? As it is right now, we're removing it. So it would go with the original plan of 24. So if I make amendment to just do 8, 9, and 10?
That would
Go
be
ahead,
appro-
help
That would
me.
be appropriate.
Okay. So we are going to take this engineer's recommendation, but removing 8, 9, and 10 for this plan.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Are there any other discussion? Okay, so we're voting on the
Amendment.
amended motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we're voting on the original motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, I'm not hearing everybody.
I don't know.
Everybody got their mics on?
They got aye, I guess I'll
Okay.
say.
You'll be voting on the original motion as amended.
As amended. That's right. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion's granted, as amended.
Ah.
Item 8.2, discuss and or take action on ordinance number 873 to amend the City of Fairview, Tennessee Municipal Zoning Code, Article 16, Section 16-102.5, Building Permits, and to authorize the non-enforcement of 2009 International Building Code, Section 105. Permits, subsection 105.2, works exempt from permit, sub-building, paragraph 1, which has been adopted by the City of Fairview, shall not be enforced by the Codes Department of the City of Fairview, Tennessee, shall be deleted.
Move to approve.
Second.
You want me to summarize?
You look like you want to talk. Go right
Yeah,
ahead.
You want me to summarize that for you?
Please.
What
Yes.
it basically does is, to get that all, what we're going to be doing is rather simple, but to get it in the caption is rather lengthy. But what it requires, the basic changement is that it's going to require all commercial buildings to have a building permit. If you read the ordinance as it presently reads, there is an exempt section in the International Building Code, which we adopted. The International Building Code is a great document, but it exempts certain types of construction in commercial areas from having to obtain a permit. One of those being if it's less than 2,000 square feet, this type of thing. What this will do is require everyone who builds a commercial building, in addition to a commercial building or whatever, to come before this board, to require a building permit, which means they're going to submit plans and this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And the only way we could do that, since we can't change the International Building Code, is for the Board of Commissioners to direct in that ordinance, and that's the reason it's here for your recommendation. They already passed it on first reading. I requested that so that anytime you're changing a zoning ordinance, you're going to have a recommendation from the Planning Commission. But I asked them to pass it on first reading and then send it to the planning commission for their recommendation, so that if it didn't pass the board of commissioners originally, you wouldn't be wasting your time here tonight, because it would never have gotten here. And in essence, that's what it does. It allows not to enforce that section of the International Building Code, which is the only way that we can amend the International Building Code. That's just that small section about the exempt stuff. That will all be stricken and will not be enforced.
Okay, so basically, any commercial structure that comes before, our codes department has to have a building
Have to have a
permit.
building permit.
So,
Now they wouldn't. You could get a building permit for one and build 4 1,999 square foot additions to it and never come for a permit.
Frank, this item and the next item on the agenda was on our code review committee.
Yes, correct.
And this includes, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say there's a landscaping place in town that needs more storage and they want to buy a storage building up here and add it to the property. They got to get a permit for that too, correct?
Yes, they do.
And it's got to meet codes.
Yes.
But it don't as it's presently written.
So by us voting on this, will it change now?
No, ma'am. That will be a recommendation. If the planning commission approves it, it will go back to the board of commissioners with a recommendation from the planning commission for approval, and then they'll have their second reading and public hearing. If you don't recommend it, it's still going to go back to the board of commissioners. Statute requires that it comes before the planning commission. You can either recommend it, not recommend it, take no action at all. But you can't change the zoning ordinance. That has to be done by the board of commissioners.
Thank you. Do you have a motion? Okay, I have a first and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion's granted. 8.3, discuss and/or take action on Resolution 05-15 PC to amend the City of Fairview, Tennessee Design Review Manual, Article 3, Section 3-104.2, Maintenance of Improvements.
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's granted. Okay, 8.4 is the Cox Pike Concept Plan. Mr. Smythe, would you approach, please?
I'd like to recuse myself from any action on this, please.
I'd like to make a motion to defer, just based on the fact that I just got this 5 minutes before the meeting, and we're also short 3 commissioners.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second to defer. Any comments?
There wasn't any engineering comments. Did you have a chance to look at this revised? No?
I didn't see this until the meeting tonight, just like you.
Okay.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
When we deferred previously, I suggested we defer because the larger question, as I understood it, was that the board was unanimous in wanting to limit the density to the RS-15 density of 2.93. I had asked for almost 4 units per acre, and the only category under which that could be approved was the RM8. But it was unanimous that the board wanted the lower density of 2.93. This is simply a visualization for you of that same plan reduced to a density of 2.93, 93 lots. So as I understand it, the board is already unanimous in regarding the appropriate density at 2.93. The larger issue is the sewer. And I believe the engineer had recommended previously that any approval of a concept plan would necessarily be contingent on an acceptable sewer on site approved by Dixon and then subsequently approved by TDEC. And I attended a meeting beneficially set up with TDEC and found their responses very affirmative and very flexible. But to sit with Mike Adams at Dixon and then subsequently with TDEC, I'm going to have to know what they want me to do before I can finalize, in the traditional sense, a fully engineered plan. This is a visualization no different from the other, but you're approving, as I understood it, simply the reduced density of 2.9, and the plan itself is contingent to an acceptable format that works the on-site sewer into the plan. So for instance, while this visualizes the 93 lots in a very organized and efficient manner, the same 50-foot by 100-foot lots that originally were introduced, we don't know where they're going to want the actual filtration plant to be set up. We don't know whether they're going to require 5 acres of drip fields according to the regs. I've been led to believe that they may allow me to set up drip lines without drip fields that follow basically the drainage flow to the detention ponds, as long as disinfectant is added to the final potable and filtered water generated by that. I have plenty of room on this site to take these lots, which fall with gravity to the southern boundary, and move them up 200 feet off that southern boundary, still hold 93 lots, still follow this same basic format, and easily put in a complete filtration system there.
Are you saying without the approval of a concept plan, they will, TDEC and Dixon Water Authority will not approve, not?
No, what I'm saying is a concept plan in an ideal world is meant to visualize.
I'm just wondering.
Well, I mean, it's discuss or take action on this.
The original application was for a zoning PUD designation, and the decision I heard was that the PUD designation would have to conform to a density of 2.93. Whether you would call this a concept plan, I think becomes a matter of, shall we say, flexible standards. I would want to sit with them to find out where they want me to locate my filtration system, where they want me to locate my septic tanks, where they want me to locate my drip fields and the status of those drip fields before I can give you a reasonably accurate concept plan in the literal sense.
The reason I called it a concept plan is that's what it's labeled.
Because that's the term we used.
Okay, well, that's the reason. I'm asking my question again. Will they not give you any answers or approvals without us approving your concept plan?
As I understood it, there were two issues. The concept plan, as I presented it, was meant to visualize what my density would be. If I'm going to work with the Dixon Water Authority, I have to know at least whether I have an approved PUD density of 2.93.
Can I comment on
Yes.
this? I think what we're, and please, anybody correct me if they did not understand it this way, but last meeting, we had a concept plan for that rezoning request for the RM8 with a PUD. If I'm not mistaken, the planning commission basically said, we're not in agreement with this density, we're not in agreement with this zoning. We don't want to send it forward what we're considering now is the zoning in this case. We don't want to send it forward with a concept plan that shows this higher density. We really want it to come back with a concept plan that shows a lower density. If I'm not mistaken, in fact, I think Mr. Cantrell even said, since you're being asked to consider one zoning classification, in effect, you're telling him you want him to come back and ask for another zoning classification, which is what he's doing with this. Now,
Why wasn't this in our packet, though, when it
okay,
came to us?
yeah, that's what I'm going to address. It's not in your packet because I received it Friday. Okay, what I was, my understanding, and I may be mistaken, but last month when it was deferred, I'd understood it was deferred until he resubmitted his concept plan, and then it would go in on the planning commission's agenda as according to our required submittal dates. But he did bring it in Friday. He asked to be on the agenda tonight, so that's why it came before you for that. But it's we're really talking about just the rezoning and what you want to send forward. But it didn't meet I think you want to have any comments. We want to go back and have a site review committee because this is a completely different concept than what he has submitted before. So that's what I understood, but anyone can ask that their item be put on the agenda. It's just, you have to come and ask you to do that. Now, is that perfectly
That's clear.
confusing?
No, that's clear.
But I think the original question is, we didn't really have time to look over this. We didn't really have time for the engineer to look over and make any kind of a recommendation. And we're rezoning. So once we pass this, then it's stuck, regardless if we want it to be zoned, RS-15 or not. So I think, unfortunately, I'm sure in the concept world of every builder would love it for us to go give them a pat on the back, say, yeah, we're going to approve this, to make it, go ahead and rezone it and make it easier. But there's still a lot of things to be answered before I can feel comfortable about proving it. So I think that maybe you need to get some of the answers from TDEC and, spend the money, and then if you want it rezoned. Now, I do remember discussions saying that we were a lot more comfortable with the RS-15. I don't know that there was any vote, but I do remember that discussion. And I do think this plan looks, like something we could talk about versus what was presented. But there's, to rezone this and not know exactly what's going to be done with it, I still, and just not having enough information, don't feel comfortable.
Well, I'd like a little more guidance, because if you'll reread the minutes from the last meeting.
Yeah, I was doing that while we talked. Thank you. While you were talking.
Yeah,
It doesn't,
a big part with me is just deadline. You have people who submit prior, we have certain deadlines, so we have
No,
time.
I
ample
understand the
time.
technicalities. I'm not
Sure,
worried
so
about that.
that's where.
that's where I would like to reaffirm while I'm here the fact that if you'll reread the minutes,
no, I mean, how? Would we like to read them?
the
Allow?
suggestion was motioned then that you approve a lower density of 2.9. And I said, look, if we're going to have a meeting with TDEC and Dixon, I will volunteer to defer. I'm perfectly willing, if you decide to defer, to fine, defer. It's just, I'd like to know we're all in the same ballpark, so if I'm resubmitting, a density of 2.93, it's because I'm following the guidelines you've given me, not just plain pin the tail on the donkey.
I think in fairness to you too, we would need comments to make sure it met our design reviews and items where if we said, yeah, we think this looks better, we sent you on your way, you might come back and we might adjust it off. Our engineer comes back and gives us notes that it wasn't going to meet some of our design ideas.
You don't have to take a vote. All you have to do is tell me informally, am I in the density you preferred?
What is that area zoned right now?
It's medium.
It's 40. It's
R40.
R40.
And that is
Acre lots.
an acre?
That's a 1 acre lot. Right.
Yeah.
But our zoning map shows it as medium density, is that correct? Which
Which
what
could be
medium
R20.
Could be RS15 or RS20, it could be medium density.
If you'll,
That's correct.
if you'll go back and read my presentation, the point I was making, if you'll look, for instance, at what Nolensville did to kick off its jurisdictional control of its own zoning, when sewer was extended from Metro, it built Bent Creek. And the lots that builders even today, 10 years later, are utilizing in Williamson County, in Bent Creek, which is more than 300 lots, are these 50-foot by 110-foot lots. And they're building $250,000 homes on those lots that are about 2,200 square feet. That's the price range I want to build to. And the only way I can make the costs work is with this size lot, because the amount of frontage determines the cost of your utilities. If you have a half-acre lot, it's typically going to be 150 to 200 foot long frontage to each lot. When I have a 50-foot lot, I can get 2 extra lots in the same length of frontage. And that's what allows the cost reductions that are passed on to the buyers. So it's not an illogical issue that is just pulled out of the air. I'll rest that. I mean, I want you to understand the logic behind what I'm doing.
Okay, Mr. Smythe, we have a motion and a first and a second to defer. Is there any more discussion?
Madam Chairman, I would also remind everyone that there is a host of supporting documentation that was initially submitted with the initial plan that would also be, I would recommend, would also need to be amended based on the plan that's been amended, so that you have that supporting documentation for a full review. Again, if the deferment is upheld and that's the direction you go. So, as has been stated, you're reviewing more than just a plan. There's some supporting documentation that's required for PUDs, and that information was submitted to you based on the initial design. As far as I know, I don't think any of that supporting documentation has been amended or revised based on this new conceptual plan. And just so the applicant can be prepared for next month, if the deferment comes through, I would suggest that those documents need to be amended to reflect the conceptual plan that's before you.
I see this as an opportunity to get the documents. Yes, Mr. Hall.
Madam Chairperson, may I make a suggestion? With the deferment, I'd like for y'all to at least, so Frank can let Mr. Smythe know when he should submit to be on next month's agenda, as well as the date for the staff review. Some of those issues that Will's talking about could be addressed in the staff, and that would be my suggestion to this board.
Do we not have a standards of what we would require them to be bringing forth to approve something like this? I mean, he should already have that in his hands and know what we would require to submit.
It's not a, yes, basically the answers Mr. Owen is referring to that were in the 3 pages I submitted earlier don't change dramatically. The open space changes from 55% to 66%. The lots are the same size. There's a lot more land that isn't used. But I'm concerned that there be a consensus of some sort that an RS-15 works as a density. We had that last meeting. And then I can put everything into that format. You don't have to vote on it. It's a discussion between us so that we're all on the same page. We had that agreement last time, I thought.
I would suggest that this deferment, you would take the opportunity to prepare your documents with, the requirements, and if RS-15 is what you're seeking, then the documents can come to us by the deadlines so that we can review them, and then we'll know more what.
All right, I'll stand down. Thank you very much.
I agree. I think that makes it easier when we vote to know exactly what, I know it's just a rezoning at this point, but I do think that, we're pretty much setting the stage for what's to come, regardless if he builds or not. So we need to have some kind of, I don't want to vote on things not knowing what I'm voting on until we see the whole package. And then I would like to be able to have our engineer make recommendations before we move on.
We have a first and a second for deferment. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's deferred. 8.5, discuss or take action on the library addition. We're reviewing the 800 square foot addition. Basically, this is a part of Williamson County, so it's just a courtesy for us to review this. Mr. William Corlew?
Jeff Corlew with CNI Design. We're the architectural firm that worked with Williamson County on the project. I do apologize that it seems we did not submit prior to the meeting. We were working for Williamson County, and the property manager said that everything had been worked out, and we just found out that it wasn't worked out until when the contractor came to get his permit. But what we got is 800 square foot addition to the library using the same brick facade, shingle roof, and we screened the mechanical equipment, and the addition's in the very back of the library. It's going to be a meeting area and a computer lab. Try to answer any questions you all might have.
So when are you guys planning on starting?
Last week.
Last week, when you pulled the permits? Great.
And this is a mutual project between the city of Fairview and Williamson County. The city was gracious enough to provide part of the funding.
That's great. I'll move for approval.
Second.
I have a first and a second for approval. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion's granted.
Thank you.
8.6, discuss or take action on the tree bank amendment to 2-103.4.
Move for approval.
Second.
A first and a second for approval. Any discussion? All in favor?
No. I have discussion. I got a lot to say. Y'all ready? Hold on. As I stated when this was brought up in the commissioners' meeting before they realized it would have to come here first, that I really think this has taken us in the wrong direction. And I feel like that this is here for a reason. It's up to us to protect our green space. And we are not the only city that enforces this. And I think it's taken us backwards. And I didn't know if, well, I don't see Mr. Humber, but I asked him this week, knowing that this was probably going to be brought back up, if he would give me some figures on what the other cities charged. Mr. Hall, do you know if Mr. Humber was able to do that?
He hasn't talked to me about that.
Okay. Well, I said it to you too. I mean, I said it to both of you.
I think he's just using the restroom.
Okay.
He'll be back.
But anyway, before we vote on something like this, I'd say that we need to kind of speak to other cities in Williamson County and know what the rate is. I don't think we should be selling ourselves short. And we have the right to give a variance at any time. Anybody can come in front of us, and as a planning commission, we can give a variance if there is an issue or concern. But I think to just all of a sudden say, no, we're not going to do that, is, taking us in the wrong direction. I think it's there for a reason, and that is, we need to protect our green space. So as commercial developments come in, I would love for them to replace the trees. But a lot of times when these developers come in, it is a lot easier for them to just write the check, and we'll be glad to take their check too.
Any more discussion?
Yes.
Madam
Go.
Chairman, may I say something?
Mhm.
This is a revision of the design review manual, which the design review manual is totally this board's control. However, if my memory is correct, when this was suggested by some members of the Board of Commissioners, and the appropriate thing for that is for it to come here. Now, this board and how you vote, I was just asked to prepare a document. How you vote, I have no say in that, don't want to say in it. But this board can approve it, and it would become effective immediately. They can disapprove it, and it's terminated. Or the same way that the board, things that are required by statute to come here for recommendations, things like we were talking a minute ago, the zoning. If this gentleman's project is ultimately rezoned, there'd be a recommendation from this board. This board can't rezone anything. The other position that you can take, if you want, is, and I'm going from memory, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but there was not a vote on this by the Board of Commissioners. It was not sent to this board as a recommendation from the Board of Commissioners. It was, and anybody can do that, but they ask you to consider something. You can also request that this go back to the Board of Commissioners for a recommendation to this board, since the design review manual is totally under your control. They can go back and be considered by the Board of Commissioners and sent to you as a recommendation of the whole board, or if it's not presented by the entire board, then it would go away. That's up to you. You can do either one of the three that you want. Well, I guess you could defer it and take no action on it, but you can approve it, disapprove it, or you can send it back to the full Board of Commissioners for their recommendation.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
I'm not
Aye.
done with discussion. I cannot believe, I'm totally not done with the discussion. The other thing is you're voting on something that you didn't have a lot of time to look over and research. And then I was still waiting for Frank to give me what he found out when he called the other Williamson County cities to see what their prices and their tree ordinance said. Did you have a chance to do that?
I haven't gotten a response back from that, but I'll be glad to find that out here for you.
I think that would be helpful.
I have a first and a second. All in favor?
I have something to mention. I haven't, like Patty said, I haven't had too much time to look over this. Going off of my initial response, the $50 drop to $5 seems extreme. One thing, just from knowing what it costs to replant a caliper tree, the one thing I do like with the variance, and I think it needs to be set so a developer would know, you know, if they're looking to buy a piece of property that is entirely treed, which we have many of those in Fairview, I think it's nice to be able to put a maximum fee of say the $25,000, so they know, okay, we're going to be doing a 20-acre development. It's a $10 million project. And, besides their landscape costs, which the landscape architect would do, they would at least know that, I'm going to put a buffer of the $25,000 for a max. So I do agree with the max. The $5, I think you might be promoting more people to come up with reasons why they don't want to plant. But I'm not very versed in how we currently do it now, but I do think the maximum, there should have always been a maximum dollar amount, because I agree, I mean, no one's going to pay $800,000 for, trees. So that's just kind of me going off of what I just read, so.
And what is, you're a developer, what's the going rate in other cities? Do you have anything to refer?
I am working on a development in Franklin. I don't have the exact cost of what the trees are, but I know when they bond a tree, which is different, and typically the bond rate is inflated, but I believe they're at $400 a tree. I don't know what caliper that is, but that's other municipalities do it differently. I think most developers know that they're coming into it, there's going to be something, but without capping it, I could see why it's scaring a lot of developers, for sure.
Any other developers sitting on this board want to give do you have any background in this and what the going rate is?
Mine's all residential, and there's, cut it all down.
And
Leave it in
that,
Metro. Metro doesn't care.
that's a good point. Because if someone owns, which we have in the city going on right now, residential, they can clear cut it, turn it commercial, and then it never mattered in the first place. So how do we justify charging what we are for someone's property who's commercial versus someone's property who they intend on it being commercial, but it's residential, and they just clear cut it, and then it's done, and then they turn it commercial?
Well, you can't necessarily
Exactly.
justify that. But
Exactly.
$5 is going from 50 to 5 seems kind of steep. Now, I kind of agree with what Matt was saying about, a cap might be a good, or we can give a variance, and it already says that we can give a variance. So, that is something that you could do anyway without having to change.
Yeah, I totally see the rule. I totally see why this is being talked about, because if I own land, I want a commercial, I know about this, I'm going to clear cut it, no one can stop
And
me.
it's going on right now in this city.
Sure, but then
So it's just not fair.
The thing is, not two parcels are created equal. So you could have parcels that aren't very treed, but then you have a developer come in who says, hey, my caliper price is $75 to plant per inch. They're going to let me do it for $5. I'm going to just pay the tree bank at $5, and then the city loses on that landscape. Publix did a great landscape job. I don't know if if that replacement ratio came into play, but I definitely, I understand both sides, I guess I should say. I don't know. I don't know what that's worth.
I would like to see us research it, get the information from the other Williamson counties before we go hasty and make decisions. I'm not opposed that maybe we shouldn't relook at it, but I don't see that we need to take our shirts off our back. I don't want to keep people from building in any means. We, of course, love commercial development, but the same same sense is we've got to be, smart about it. Why would we not have some kind of good ordinance in place that protects our city, but encourages, development at the same time? And I think there's a way you can do it. But hasty decisions is not the way.
Mr. Humber?
I did find some information I have from the city of Franklin. They charge $25 tree removal permit.
Permit,
Yeah. To remove a tree, it's cost $25.
but it's per tree or a permit?
That's per tree.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I say, get a couple other Williams County cities and compare, and if we're way over in the ballpark, then we come, we take a look. But, without knowing, I would like to amend the motion that we defer this to allow us time to review other areas, tree ordinances.
Commissioner Johnson, would you like to speak?
Why would we have Commissioner Johnson speak right now?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, for the ability to allow me to come to the podium. The mayor is partly right in what she's saying. There's a lot of study that has gone into this, and there's a lot of developers that have been telling us what has been going on in other cities. Mr. Beata is exactly correct. If y'all do not feel that the $5 fee is appropriate, y'all can set that tonight at any fee between $50 and $5, and I believe the city will be okay with that. The maximum being $25,000, I think, is the main thing. The developers want to know the official cost at the highest end. If you left it at 50 and made it 25, I think that would be appropriate. So anything between the 50 and the 5, the city moves forward tonight with y'all's decision. Thank you.
Can I ask one question? Do we have any pending developments that this is gonna hinder? That you know of?
we don't have really many pending developments in commercial.
Just a question.
Okay, so who made the first and second motion
I
of
made
the
motion.
original?
I made the motion, I think Mr. Beata seconded, I do believe.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Mayor Carroll,
Amended it to defer it to do research and come back.
I will say this, and I did make the motion. But if we don't have anything that it's gonna hurt, that it's gonna hold up, we'll have another meeting in 30 days, or actually less than 30 days. I'm not opposed to doing a little research if it's not gonna hurt anything.
so are you making a second on the deferment?
Did she complete her deferment motion?
Yes,
She just blanket said she wanted to defer it.
no, I didn't. I
Right.
said I wanted to defer it till we could do some research on this ordinance and come back with what the other cities in at least Williamson County. I mean, we can do surrounding, I guess.
Mr. Cantrell?
I don't mean to be picky, but it's a resolution.
Okay. Okay. So the resolution. We can come
Motion.
back and.
Your motion to defer would be the motion to defer the resolution.
Yeah.
Was there a second on deferring?
I'll second it.
So you're, so you're the first on approving it, and you're the second, and then you're the first on deferring it, and you're the second.
So you vote on the amendment first. And then if that passes, you don't need to vote on the first, on the first motion, because it would be deferred, and you wouldn't need to vote on it. It would, by implication, remove the first motion. Because you can't approve it and defer it at the same time.
So if it's approved to defer, then,
Deferred, and the other motion was not necessary anymore. You can't vote on the motion to, if it passes to defer it, then the motion to either defeat it or pass the original motion is unnecessary.
any more discussion? All in favor of the motion as being deferred?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. What? Okay, nay. Let's just put it in the record right. I said nay. Number 9, reports for discussion and information. 9.1, Director of Planning and Codes, Mr. Humber.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of comments, basically pertain to some of the issues that have come up tonight. If the Planning Commission would like to give me further guidance on what I should submit to you based on, when it comes in, that's fine. I'd be glad to do it with the way you want to. But what I've been going by is our schedule of submission, deadline, staff review meeting that we have set up, for the whole year. And I'm really trying to adhere to that so that we can do it fairly. Plus you have, this is set up so you have at least 11 days to review your PC packet, between 11 and 18 days to review your PC packet, and I really think that's worked out pretty well. We're getting a lot of requests, a lot of interest, and I have people bringing in things from time to time, and I'm pretty well telling them, you passed the deadline, and whether it's a small or large project, I'm trying to put it in to our schedule because I want the Planning Commission to have your full review, plus have in the case of site review, have the site review committee to look at it and have time to give you, and Will make his comments and all that. But if you just said, if you want me to, whenever I receive something, I can send it to you, but I'm trying to deal with it where we stick by the rules and say,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to keep you from having the information, like whether it's earlier or, you know what I'm saying, but.
I for one feel if they don't make the deadline, they're going to the next month.
Yeah.
That's how I feel, because the staff review, during your staff review meetings, the longer you guys have it, the more you mull over it. Then when it comes to us, it should be very clean. We had time to talk about it. The one thing, Mr. Smythe, with the conceptual plat, it's not just about the lot sizes and the rezoning. It's also about the configuration of the lots, the buffer areas. The whole reason we have a conceptual plan is that's when the developer has the least amount of money in the project at that point, and we're allowed to give more feedback than just the rules and regulations we have set. So that was kind of the one thing with that is I noticed right off the bat there was no turning lane as the other one was, little things like that. And I'm not going to make a decision if I'm uncomfortable with, or forced to do it. So we all, we're all busy, we all have things going on, and, I just feel like people should follow deadlines. That's why we have them. So I think you're doing the right thing. I would probably tell them, don't even waste your time.
Right, but, and on the other hand, I do think it was appropriate for the planning commission to consider their, looking at the library edition.
Sure, of
Just
course.
based on the scale of that and also based on our jurisdiction over that.
That's a slam dunk,
You
yeah.
know what I'm saying? I mean, I appreciate y'all considering that. I don't necessarily want to make it hard and fast, but I don't want to hold anybody up.
Sure.
But I want to be sure you've got the information you've got, and also, we do have a requirement that notice be sent out, or, of course, we have a 15-day requirement for publishing our, what's coming up on our agenda and those kind of things, which needs to be done too.
Yeah,
So-
another, to note, I had received several emails about the Smythe development and, just the three commissioners not being here. I think it's a project that's of size that we should all, really look at. So,
Well, and I think there are things we can do. We can, if we know we're gonna do a amendment to the agenda, there's simple things. You can send out an email, to all of us, what's gonna be on there, because we had from Friday to today to look over. Also, you can email the paper, and they can post it and put it on the web. They can shoot it out on their, public notice. So even if we know that we're going to make a decision to add things on the agenda, we could give public notice and then vote whether to add it or not. It doesn't mean we're going to, but at least makes people aware if they want to come discuss anything. I mean, without it being on the agenda, it really doesn't give a fair opportunity for the citizens to come and make comments. I have a feeling, I also had a lot of emails, and I have a feeling that there would have been several people here if they thought this item was on the agenda tonight. So,
Well, if you had all these emails, just like I did, then they did know it was going to be on the agenda.
well, I know, when did you know?
Right.
When did you know it was going to be on the agenda? Oh, you mean from?
I meant, you said that they
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but they did know if they emailed
But,
you
I mean,
because,
okay, let's
right?
use-
I'm just saying.
yeah, that's a good
I'm
example.
just
I didn't know it
saying.
was going to be on the agenda.
But, okay, but if we got emails about it, then they knew that it was
How
coming.
did they know?
If we didn't know, how did they
Yeah,
know?
how did they
Well,
know?
okay, let me tell you what I gathered from that, if we're gonna have a discussion about this. I gathered that they assumed because it was deferred, that it would be deferred to this month. Okay? That's what I gathered.
Well, if
And I
you,
told them if they wanted to voice their concerns, that they needed to come to the meeting and speak. And
well, that's a great answer too, but it wasn't on the printed agenda that went out, so they have no reason to really believe that it was going to be put on. And unless, something we didn't prior, then, we really didn't know what. Now, I was told on Monday or whenever I was with Mr. Hall that he came forth the plan, and I did, and Mr. Humber was there, and I questioned about it going on the agenda, meaning we didn't have, any information. So besides Monday, I didn't have any other information, but they did share that then.
But from what I understand, if someone asks to be on the agenda, then it comes to us, it comes to me, and then we vote on it. So, so what are we saying? We want Frank
No, I'm just
to
saying.
tell people they can't be on the agenda and we don't vote on it as
I
a
was told
group?
in February, I was 2 days past the deadline, and I was told, you missed it.
Did you ask to be on the agenda?
I was told I missed it. It wasn't an option. I missed it. So let's just make it fair for everybody on board.
I'm not saying fair or not fair. I'm just saying if someone asks, what I've been told, if someone asks to be on the agenda, then we vote on if we are going to accept it or not.
But it's not fair for anybody on this board, like Mr.
No, and I'm
Rice
not
said,
saying that,
not have our staff have time to review it and give us.
and
their
I'm not
feedback.
saying, I'm not saying that either. I believe that we should have time to review it and everything. All I'm saying is if someone asks to be on the agenda, you know, where does it?
They have a right to ask.
They have a right
Is
to
that-
ask.
That's what you're saying.
And then, you know, we have a right to say no. Because in my opinion, if we were gonna defer it, we should have just voted not to put it on the agenda tonight. That was the first thing that came to my head. Why didn't we vote? And I'm not saying, you know, I'm just saying, why didn't we vote not to put it on the agenda tonight? And then we wouldn't have had to put up with, not put up with, but we wouldn't have had to go through the whole situation we did.
Well,
No?
That's a
a
good
lot
point.
of times
That's a
we don't know how, I mean, they don't, that's not really fair to say because they didn't maybe know how they were gonna vote. Obviously, a good example was that, Mr. Mangrum made a motion and we got a second, and during discussion, he was like, I'm okay with that. So a lot of times, in all fairness, we have the right to get up here and have discussion and change our mind about something. So, I mean, it's not just to say, well, you know, if we weren't gonna vote for it, we shouldn't have put it on the agenda. Well, that's not quite how that
And
works.
I didn't mean not vote for it. I mean, if we were gonna defer it anyway, because it didn't meet the deadline, we could have just voted not to put it on the agenda because it didn't meet the deadline and we didn't have time to review it.
Let me make, try to clear up a little something. Mr. Mangrum, had he asked to be added to the agenda, it would have been our obligation to at
That's
least bring
right, that's
it to
right.
y'all.
That's the
See,
very
did you know
reason.
And
But,
let me finish.
okay.
So when they come to the codes department, we have been saying, even when I was handling it for 5 months, I did the same thing. We would present it. If y'all want to add it to the agenda, that's fine. On a deferred item, it's automatic to go back on the next month's agenda. That's an automatic.
And that's what I'm saying, it was
Yeah.
deferred, so.
It would come to now, his conceptual plan wasn't what should have been considered. The rezoning is what he should have been being considered tonight, according to what Mr. Beata said from last month's meeting. And that's the only thing that should have been considered, was the rezoning period, not the conceptual plan or anything else. Am I right on that?
Yeah.
That's
You
my
are.
experience from sitting up there for 18 years. And that's the way I see where you should be going. It's Frank's obligation, if they come in, like the library did, they was past the deadline, we give them the opportunity. Then it's up to y'all to make that decision. Am I right on that, Larry?
Yes, sir. From a standpoint of having a board, it's your agenda. There are some statutory exceptions, of course. If you call a special meeting, you cannot add anything to that agenda. That item will be considered in that item or items only. But I don't think you want to get into a situation where, and you perfectly could, but it would have to be passed by the board that says, okay, if it doesn't meet the date for the cutoff, then we're going to authorize Mr. Humber to say the board's not going to consider it. It's your agenda, but you don't want to get so inflexible, and I can point out a couple of examples where where such a policy would have really hurt the city. This board don't see that many, and the Board of Commissioners do. People that hand out 100% grants, when they get ready to hand them out, they say, okay, here's a grant. Fire department gets some, police department gets some, but you may or may not get it before it goes out on the agenda. They walk in and they say, okay, we've got this grant, and it's to do X, Y, and Z, buy equipment for the fire department, buy protective equipment for the police department, and the people that give us out, some of them are state, some of them U.S. grants, and they'll say, okay, here it is. I've got to have a decision on this by next week, or the 10th or 11th or 12th of April. Well, you know, you can add that you present to the board, we want to add this grant. It's paid for 100% by the state, the governor's safety program or whatever, but I got to have an answer tomorrow. So if you've got a policy that says we're not going to consider it, you've got one or two choices. You've got to call a special meeting, and sometimes you get in under the 12 hours. Sometimes you know the time is less than the 12 hours, and then you end up losing that $30,000 or $40,000 grant because you can't give them an answer timely, and they mean if they say the 10th of April, and you don't get it for the 10th of April, it's gone. So you don't want to get into that, and since it's your agenda, if somebody walks in and says, I don't care how, when I look at it and say, that's not gonna happen because I got 8 inches of paper plans you gotta look through, and I'm giving it to you the day before. But I've got a right to ask to be heard, and then that decision is yours, not mine. It's your agenda, not mine. And you don't want to say that they can't do that. And it's perfectly legal for you to look at it and say, we haven't had time to consider this. I'm not going to vote on this tonight because I'm not going to be backed into a corner. We'll defer it. That's your call. But I don't think you want to get in a situation where he says, if it comes in at this time, we're not going to consider it, because you can get into situations where good policy, fairly applied to everybody, but the guy's holding the check out there and says, okay, there's a city right down the road that wants it.
Well, can you represent, if we take something, and as planning commissioners, my legal liability, if I vote for something, a conceptual plan, without looking at any of the informations, you wouldn't be able to defend us. I mean, we're basically approving something. So it should be a no-brainer to me that nobody should come, if he gives you this and doesn't give you anything else, and you're asking us to vote on a conceptual plan, that all the information needs to be provided with it. It's plain and simple. I mean, legally, you can't represent me. And if I sat there and voted on something and didn't look, and he can, somebody could prove that we never even saw the information, so
Well,
I just,
Not past the extent of the Tort Claims Liability Act. I mean, I couldn't say, we've got a good defense. The only defense we'd have is, that was a mistake made by a commission in the furtherance of their job, and they're immune. But that's not a good way to go. The city probably wouldn't be immune, and they'd lose could potentially, I won't say they would, they could potentially lose the limits of the Tort Claims Liability Act.
So to go back to answer your question, plain and simple, if somebody wants to be added on the agenda, sure, if you want to allow them to be added on the agenda, but you need to make sure that it is understood that they don't have all their stuff. We don't have to listen to it. As a matter of fact, we don't have to add it. But if we do, we're not going to vote on something without all the information. And then, I think we have a guideline for a reason. There's a process. And if you do all the process correctly, then we're ensuring that we're protecting our city. And that's what our job is. Our job is to protect the city and the future development of the city. And, do we want codes or do we not? Do we want to throw them out the window and, have purple buildings and, metal, and that's the kind of things. These codes are in place. The process is there for a reason. And, whether or not somebody wants to be added to the agenda, sure, you can let them come in front of us. But it doesn't mean that we are not taking our job serious if we let people come in here, halfway present something, and then take a vote.
Madam Chairperson, can I get some clarification? On 8.4, when it was added, was it just discuss and or take action, or was it?
These were all discuss and or take action. And I probably didn't state it that way.
Well, the reason I was asking, because we've got a conceptual plan, and Mr. Hall's got a good point. We should have only been looking at
Zoning.
rezoning,
Yeah.
but we don't even have a rezoning application. So shouldn't we have that? That's, because they changed the zoning from what they was asking RM8 to RS15. So if we were looking at zoning, we should have a rezoning application, I thought.
Those are the things that Will address in staff review, and y'all have been in staff review. Those are the things that Will address there. Am I right on that, Will?
And
That's the reason. Like this come to you tonight, I agree that you shouldn't add it to the agenda, but we give the customer the opportunity.
I agree.
But if you follow the protocol and then it's an application in time, Frank's going to tell him what his reason is, set him on the staff review list. We'll address them there to bring the plan to compliance. Then most of it's usually addressed right in staff, and when it gets to here, y'all shouldn't have any problem with it.
I mean, I agree with that. And that's why if it don't at least get to staff review, it's really wasting the time even adding it to the agenda, because it's, something of this size, I can tell you, I'll never vote for it unless it goes through our city engineer.
That's where you find out discrepancies. But, with respect to the customer, if they request, you have to give them the right to come. It's up to y'all.
And like
I
you
agree.
said, with the deferment, it goes to the next month.
He still didn't get.
He didn't turn in properly.
Didn't
Right, and I'm not saying we should have voted on anything, I'm just saying that deferment.
If he didn't change his plan, if it was just the same, if we deferred and he came back with the same exact thing, then I think
Well,
it
we
would be
deferred and
fine.
he came back with a lower density. So
But-
it did get,
Sure, but, and, yeah, so, and he didn't update that.
We probably should have deferred.
Yeah.
We should have shot it down.
Based on this right here, and we would have stopped that right there, but as far as the library, that was a great opportunity.
yeah.
That's the ones we need to look at.
Yeah.
and see, that's what Larry was saying, is that we can't just blanket say, if you don't meet the deadline, you don't get on. We've got to be able to we've got to be able to review each one and decide.
There's certain items that.
Yeah, not all items are the same.
We can stop them before we put it on the agenda. That's where it should have been stopped earlier tonight.
Mm-hmm.
We should have said, you know, do you have X, Y, and Z? No, sir, I don't. Then no, we're not gonna put it on the agenda. It needs to go through the,
Staff
city
review.
engineer first. Thank you.
Well, and I even recommend doing items.
He was arguing about, he was wanting us to say, well, can you just give me this? I'll go talk to Dixon and, you know, get there. Just tell him, okay. That's what he was looking for. We couldn't.
Yeah.
So we should just stop that before he even walked up there and just said, without anything in front of us, we can't put you on the agenda next.
Well, I think there's a couple things we learned from this whole scenario. Maybe from now on, when we add multiple items to the agenda, we vote on them one at a time to be
You know,
added.
that's a good idea.
And then
We will
another
vote on
thing,
one at a time.
we don't want people to come to us and listen to a couple of us speak and give them our thoughts and then come back the next month and say, well, I thought that was consensus. And that's what we seen today.
He was just looking for
We seen that exploited a little bit, and we may need to be a little bit more cautious about that and not give somebody a false impression of approval before it's approved, so.
we should have never given him the floor anyway.
Well, but see,
Maybe we
I'm still curious about one thing, is before he can go, and I want to clear this up in my head, before he can go to TDEC or Water Authority, I mean, does he have to have, you know, some idea, or he just presents what he
Really
thinks
would
he could
need-
get and see what they say.
Well, he would really need he would need more engineering done to see if street radiuses and curbing and all that, the devil's in the details. So right now, it's just talk right now.
just looking for us to say, we think we'll
Yeah.
go with that, so he knew what.
He
to
could
bring
start
before those
engineering
guys
and-
and get them to say, he wanted to say, okay, how many minutes? Are you okay with that? And you come back and say, oh, no, we're not doing it. All right, 15, we're gonna do, then you have to go back again. But we get, hey, I thought we figured out last meeting, we're gonna do RS 15. If you just said, yes, that's what he would have presented to those folks and brought, I think Will, what he needed to have that done, he was okay with that, 93 lots, and let's run with it.
Well, and we did set up a meeting with TDEC, and we did invite him in. But TDEC basically said the same thing, is they couldn't approve something until they saw the plan. You know, they could listen to his, ideas and, different ways and have a discussion, but until he actually had something to put in front of him. So, basically, it's the same situation. Not even TDEC is going to approve
He
something
just
without
has to bring
seeing.
before us what he wants, approved or not approved, come back, once it's approved, then take it to them. That's what he needs to do.
Mr. Hall?
I hate to keep butting in, but the first thing that Frank advises them is to approach the Water Authority of Dixon for sewer capacity. What did I tell you, Tim, when you brought this back? Didn't I tell you to talk to Michael Adams first?
You did, yes, sir.
Yes, that's the first step that should be taken. And then the next step is I advised Mr. Smythe, the first step that he should have requested only without even bringing this in would have been a rezoning. The reason the conceptual was there to give y'all an idea of what he was going to rezone it for. And that's the only thing that's, I've told him all along, get your rezoning set first after you talk to the Water Authority of Dixon. Now, what steps they took, I don't know. But that's the process that should have been taken. And then bring you a conceptual plan, then a preliminary, and then a final. That's the steps that should have been taken. So, anyway, I'm going to ask my question, then I've got one question I want under city manager's comments, and I'm going to jump ahead to that, Larry. On the library, since he was approved tonight, can he get a building permit tomorrow? Okay. No. He was actually refused a building permit until it went through the planning commission, so I just wanted to, I didn't want to hold them up none. Y'all seen his urgency that he wanted to get started.
They approved this plan, he needs a building permit.
Okay. And thank y'all, and I'm sorry about butting in so much, but I'm trying to clarify.
We need
with a little-
everybody's input
I'm trying to
because
clarify with a
we-
little bit
you
of
know,
experience.
it's
If
important.
Larry or Will thinks I'm out of order, they can let me know whether I'm wrong or right. But I think I'm right on most of it anyway. Thank you.
That's all I had.
We're like, city manager. Okay, we're kind of out of order here. Since we're out of order, did you finish? Are you good? Okay, so we're gonna go from 9.1, 2, 3, and 4 is finished. So, 9.2, city engineer.
Yes, and I'll be quick, because I know it's late, because my wife's texting me.
What's going on?
I continue to encourage you to take this book and go through it. Continue to go through it and make revisions. Part of the source of confusion amongst everyone, you, staff, applicants, is some of the language and wording in procedural aspects. And that's found, some of that confusion is found in the PUD approvals. The PUD, planned unit development, is that, a planned development. And in order to process and submit for a PUD rezoning, a preliminary, what's classified in here as a preliminary master development plan is what's required as a part of that application, rezoning application process. So, and I know, because I've been there and I've heard people, not in all my jurisdictions that we work with, you know, there's, well, why are you so picky on what something's called? Well, like tonight, you had the quote conceptual plan in front of you. There's nothing in this book that identifies a conceptual plan for PUD rezoning. So 10 years from now, even if everything, all the documentation was in front of you tonight and submitted timely, but it was called a conceptual plan, if somebody's looking back and says, well, here it says there should have been a preliminary master development plan, but this is a conceptual plan, so it's hard to track what approvals were given, when they were given, and where along the process, you know, that this project either fell off by the wayside, which we're seeing a lot of come back now, and Mr. Humber can attest to that. I mean, the research that has to take place on a prior approved development to see exactly where it was left off and when, and what approvals it did gain. You know, so semantics plays a very important role in what a submittal is called. So, you know, I won't harp on that anymore, but you're doing good things with the Codes Review Committee. I encourage you to continue that stuff. One thing that came up tonight that you might want to look at, any multifamily development of any size, if it's a 4-unit apartment complex, based on this book, is required to have a minimum 2,000 square foot clubhouse. And there's no alternatives, no caveats, nothing. So just little stuff like that is things that you can take a look at, and little by little you piece it off. So don't feel like you got to do the whole thing, but continue your work in that arena, and the people that come after you will be very grateful. I'm certain. That's all.
City Attorney, Mr. Cantrell, 9.3.
I had planned to not say anything. I've talked enough tonight, but I'll take about a minute and a half. I agree with what Will said. I'll just expand on a couple of things. At some point in time on that PUD unit, it's going to get the right name. I think it should have it from the start. But just to remind everybody that when this final PUD plan comes through, you'll have a recommendation on it. The board will be the one that approves the PUD, because once that PUD plan is approved, that becomes the zoning. There is not a zoning ordinance per se. You have a PUD plan, and whatever's on that plan, note-wise or whatever, becomes the zoning. The second thing that I just bring up to you, because nobody's going to be able to find all these things, but if you as a board and we as a staff, if we notice that continuously, let's say, for example, somebody comes in and asks for a variance on the 26 feet and we grant them 24, 26, and 24, that at some point would tell me that this board prefers 24 feet, then let's go change that requirement so that you're going to be getting what you want rather than having to grant variances all the time. As you know, there's two ways they can get a variance. They can do it when they come in with their plan. If it slips through and they happen to, and it gets by and there's something they can't live with, they can always go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. But if we consistently notice something that you're getting variances on over and over and over and over again, and you're approving them over and over and over again, which is your prerogative. I'm not criticizing you for that, but if that's the case, then we should either say what we mean or mean what we say. Let's go back to the document and let's change it so you'll get what you want. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 10 is communication from the Planning Commission members. Mr. Mangrum?
I only have one thing. Can we, speaking of the clubhouse issue, can we add that to the next Code Review Committee? Yes, we just put that down. 'Cause I think the size of them, you know, dictates what would be allowed by the developer on a cost efficiency basis. And that's all I have.
Mr. Butler?
Nothing further tonight, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Beata?
I wanted to mention something from last meeting. I went through the design review again, and the gas station over on 96, and I believe Mr. Mangrum brought it up, that there is a brick ratio requirement, minimum requirement. So you were right, I was wrong, I apologize. I believe it's 70% of the building must be brick. I just wanted to say that. I'm not a shy about admitting when I'm wrong, but I just want everybody to keep learning and keep getting each other's back up here and making sure, there's a lot to comb over and mistakes are made. The codes review's been great. One thing I would like us to talk about, and you mentioned with the PUD, is maybe getting here, doing a little workshop an hour before. Because there's PUD, then there's conservation PUD, walkable PUD, and I believe from here on out, we're probably going to get PUD, plan unit development requests. So it might be worthwhile for all of us to brush up on the process and what the requirements are, what makes it a conservation subdivision as opposed to walkable, as opposed to just a PUD. I don't know if we want to set that next month or just get it knocked out, since I believe we're about to get a flood of this kind of stuff. That's all.
It's good with me if we want to, we got, we can email the other three. Like do it an hour before, like 6.
That'd be great.
Great suggestion.
Mr. Dowdy? Mayor Carroll?
Thank you. I won't talk long, but I just want to say that I'm going to keep saying this a lot. This is a crucial time for our city. We have a lot of developments on the table, and making sure that we are doing things correctly is going to be key. I am for growth and development. I spend 40 hours a week at a regular job, and then I spend another 36 to 40 hours promoting our city and trying to bring people to our city to build. So in no means do I want to make it difficult for people to come to the city of Fairview. But with that being said, I think to be respectful to who we are and what we want to become, we need to be very careful when we make these considerations to make sure that we are following our codes and moving forward. And like Will and the attorney both said, if there is a code that maybe was too strict, sure, let's talk about it. But let's not do it without doing our research, giving it some thought, studying some other areas that maybe have experienced the growth before we have. This is new to us, to this level. And we got a lot of big subdivisions that we're going to have to vote on. And just making sure that we're where we need to be is going to be crucial. And felt like, the people that came in tonight, I wanted to ask, is there something, can we follow up on these situations? Yes.
I will be looking close to this myself, and I will be looking.
Okay, and I did think that, that there was a good point. We need to make sure that if it's a grading issue that we're not catching or that was missed, we need to protect the citizens that are buying in our community. So let's try to follow up on that, and if you'll let us know, maybe give us a report back next month. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the citizens that came to speak tonight, and I have a real problem with people owning residential property that know that they're gonna become commercial, and they clear cut before they do it, because I just feel like that's totally unfair.
I agree.
I just have a big problem with that. And I think that, I don't know how that could be, resolved. I don't even know if it can, but, I'm all about trees and our city being beautiful, and I live in a subdivision that's surrounded by big, beautiful, mature trees, and I love those, but I don't think it's, fair when this happens. So I just, if we could look at, I don't know even how that could be remedied, but, that's just my thoughts on that. Water issues, I can't even imagine. I have a beautiful creek behind me and I love water, but if it was flooding my house all the time, I don't know what I would do. That would be awful. So I think, Mr. Tucker and Miss Wade, I'm sure there's other situations where, maybe things could be handled differently. So I think that's important. I know, and it's got to be, I guess, looked into better when, I don't know, when excavation's being done. But I think we had a good discussion tonight. I know that sometimes, things get long and it just appears like, I think we're all trying to do the right thing. We're all trying to make this, we know all the, the growth is coming, and it's, I'm excited about it, but we do need to do, do the right thing and make sure that things are, done correctly according to our codes. And I'm glad we've got our code review committee, because I think that we're really, looking into issues that do cause confusion, and hopefully we can, get to the bottom of that to where there's less confusion, because I get confused, and I've been up here for quite a while, and I'm just like, wow, and even though I research before I get here, I find, that I'm confused about some things, so I know that it's hard for everybody, so we all need to just work together. And just, we've got a lot of great businesses here, so just make sure that you, think about that and shop here before you go to other communities, and keep your money in Fairview. We're adjourned.